Marvel Rivals is back for another closed beta test, so here are all the heroes in different tiers so you know what to play and more about them. Let's dive into it. Now these are my opinions as somebody with competitive Overwatch background from all the way back in the day and a lot of background in arena shooters, but obviously some people will disagree, so let me know in the comments if you don't agree. But let's start off by going over the different DPS heroes. Starting off in the F tier for the DPS, we're gonna start off with Star-Lord. While I see a lot of value in him, you know, as a duelist, as somebody who can get a lot of picks, overall I feel like sustained damage makes more sense, especially with how tanky the tanks are in this game and how difficult it is to actually get a flank off. There's a million different ways that somebody can be saved or protected with invulnerability, and if you mess up as a Star-Lord, you'll just end up dying anyways. I really want to get behind Star-Lord because I do think the concept is really cool, but overall I don't think he's really that strong. Another hero that I have to put in the F tier, which I, full disclosure, might be wrong about, but I just cannot justify him whatsoever, is going to be Spider-Man. I don't think Spider-Man is that good. I definitely see some value if you can manage to get a cool sneaky kill off and get a one pick on a valuable enemy, but you're gonna find yourself deep in enemy lines. You have a character who only does melee damage, which can be good against other heroes on land, but when you're fighting anyone who's flying, you are literally useless. And I think it's way too much work to get one kill with Spider-Man when any other hero can do the same job, if not a better job, with way less effort. Moving into the D tier, we have Storm. I was actually surprised to learn that she was a DPS hero. Apparently she is a DPS hero and not a support. I didn't feel like she did that much damage whatsoever. She seemed to be more about enabling her teammates, which can be good with the right team, but if you want to output damage for your team, I just have a hard time seeing why you would choose Storm to do so. Another hero in the D tier will be Namor. I want to put him higher up, but so far I have a hard time seeing where he would fit, especially when we do compare with the heroes higher up in the DPS tier. You can get a decent amount of damage with the spears, especially if you hit a lot of headshots with them, and his ultimate is pretty solid, but I feel like most of Namor's abilities, especially the octopi, don't really seem to have much of an impact. It's convenient that you can do the invulnerability and get out of a tricky spot, but the enemy can usually just chase you, and overall I don't feel like it has that much consistent damage or impact. Hopping into the C tier, we're gonna say Scarlet Witch. So this will be basically the middle of the pack. I feel like Scarlet Witch is pretty solid. Her ultimate is pretty cool. It's basically like a diva from Overwatch, but as you go up the skill levels, as you play against better and better enemies, I believe she loses a lot of value. She gets out DPS by most heroes, even ones farther down in the tier list. She does have some decent abilities. Again, the diva is pretty solid, but overall I want to say that she's just not strong enough to have a consistent performance and actually have an impact on the game. Another hero, of course, in this tier will be Black Panther. I want to put him higher, and he does suffer from the same issue as Spider-Man, where you have to get close, you have to kill him with melee and abilities, all very close range, or rather melee range, but he is obviously placed a little bit higher, and that's for one very good reason. He gets a dash reset when he kills somebody with his dash. This means that Black Panther can jump in and do a full combo on an enemy and then use his dash to finish him off and then dash again to get away. As I understand it, Spider-Man does not have that ability, and I can definitely see Black Panther diving in, getting a burst of damage off and getting a kill, and then getting out safely, much more consistently and much more safely than honestly most other heroes. And then closing out the C tier, we of course have Iron Man. I don't like Iron Man too much personally. I feel like the beam is pretty solid, but his abilities feel really clunky to use. And I mean, using the projectile shots is pretty decent. You can deal a decent amount of damage, and using the secondary fire beam is solid. The ultimate is really good when used correctly, but ultimately relying on projectiles or a beam that kind of slows you down and makes you an easy target means that Iron Man will be solid. You can still use him and get something done, but overall I don't think he's as good as the other heroes in this list. So moving on into the B tier, and this could be A tier or B tier, I'm not entirely sure, but I only have one hero here, and that's of course Magic. She is so strong that she basically is a tank. She can jump straight into the enemy team, spam her ability, spam her sword, dash around, and basically never die thanks to her passive converting dealt damage into overheal, or rather a shield. She basically becomes a dive tank, and she has a lot of impact despite being a melee only legend. I guess we'll have to put her in B tier because she is a melee hero, which means that she doesn't have much impact, if any impact, against flying heroes, but I still really want to put her here because she can deal so much damage and have such an impact impact and create so much chaos inside of any enemy team. But anyways, hopping past the B tier, we have the A tier, and I was torn whether to put this guy in the A tier or in the S tier, but we're gonna move him right into the A tier. We are of course talking about Punisher. Punisher is so good. He has consistent damage, I guess basically no recoil whatsoever, hit, scan, damage, basically the Soldier 76 of Marvel Rivals. He has a very, very fast dash. He can do a smoke. He has a shotgun, which can let you absolutely smoke any enemy up close, especially including tanks. You can just destroy tanks that get too close. And of course, he even has a passive that lets him track down any nearby enemies as well, giving you an insane amount of game sense and allowing you to deal with flankers or hunt down any enemies that you would like. Now, Punisher is genuinely so good. Again, he has consistent damage and he's just a very strong kit, but he is still not the best DPS that you can ask for in this beta, because that is the only DPS sitting in the S tier, that being Hela. Hela, I don't know how to pronounce it. I do not watch the movies, but basically, Hela, she has a whole kit and I don't care about half of it because there's only 3 things you need to know about. 1, her primary fire has almost no damage fall off, it seems, and it is hit scan, and if you hit headshots, you can 2-shot basically any squishy enemy, and you can even completely destroy any tanky ones. She does have a secondary that shoots a bunch of arrows, whatever, I don't care about them. She also has a stun ability, which will lock enemies inside of the stun ball in place for a little while as they're stunned, and then it gets sucked into the ball, which makes it much easier to line up these very headshots. You can get 2 to 3 shots off while they are stunned, and if you're fighting a, let's say, a flanker or duelist jumping in your face, this will win you a duel on your own. But even if you mess up your stun, or if too many of them come at you at once, you have one more trick up your sleeve, and that's of course your dash, which turns you into a bird and just sends you flying in any direction you want out into safety. It's so good. It's such a strong kit. I don't know how they did not nerf her come this beta. She also has a really good ultimate. Yeah, we're not done. She also has a really good ultimate, which suspends her in the air. She gets a hell of a ton of health, and then she can throw these big explosive balls that deal huge chunks of damage in an area of effect wherever they land. She can basically 2-shot a squishy or 3-shot a squishy, depending on how good you hit the shots, and just demolish entire teams. And when the ultimate form runs out or she dies, she can just kind of dash out of there, no problem. And that's my tier list for the DPS. As somebody who likes shooting at things, this is probably my most accurate one. I do believe that consistent damage and survivability are the 2 most important factors, and of course, I guess ease of access is always good to know about, but again, survivability and consistent damage over time are the most important factors when it comes to a DPS. But let's check out the tanks as well. And let me just start off by saying that the tanks in this game are pretty solid overall. Generally speaking, you cannot go wrong with whatever tank you do pick, unless we're talking about Hulk, of course, because Hulk is just not good. I feel like his whole kit is about getting shields and additional health and enabling his teammates with more health for shields, but he doesn't actually have that much health. You can't really frontline with him properly because you'll get destroyed by the enemy team immediately. So that's why I put Hulk in D tier. Maybe it should be an F tier, but he is still a tank. I don't want to cut him too short. Moving on into C tier, we have Doctor Strange. Now, Doctor Strange could be higher up, but I feel like overall his kit just is not that strong when compared to the other heroes higher up in the tier list. I do want to give a huge props to the portal ability that he has. It looks pretty cool, and I'm sure there's a ton of really fun outplays you can pull off with it. His only real redeeming factor is his secondary fire, so his shield with 600 health or his ultimate, which stuns all of enemies in an area of effect. But overall, I don't feel like he does a good job actively tanking in the middle of a fight. Moving on, of course, we have Penny Parker. Now, she isn't really a main tank. I would probably argue she's more of a flex tank style of tank, so we'll move on from that accordingly. I will put her in the B tier because I believe she is pretty solid. She could main tank as well, but obviously her job is more about putting up webs and mines and controlling an area, all while having the ability of using her movement by dashing to her webs or whatever, so she can jump onto the backline if they end up getting too close to the webs and just dive right into them and cause a lot of chaos, as a tank should. She doesn't have too much survivability, but she does have a lot of movement. She does have a lot of utility, which can be used in a lot of creative ways, which makes me feel she still can be pretty solid. But let's move into the A tier of the tanks. So the first one, I'm gonna have to say Magneto is definitely an A tier tank. His whole kit, and maybe he should even be an S tier, but we'll get to that later. I believe there's one pick that is way better. He has a Reinhardt shield. It's just a big shield he can put in front of himself. He has a Zarya bubble, so he can add a shield to himself or to a teammate to absorb damage. So like a bubble when he can use all of these at the same time. He has an ability that lets him swing a blade, which deals a hell of a lot of damage. His normal attack deals a hell of a lot of damage. His ultimate can deal a hell of a lot of damage. This dude just tanks so much damage and just returns it to center, and he is absolutely lethal in the right hands. Even in the wrong hands, honestly. This guy's just good. So again, that's why I feel like Magneto should be in the A tier. Another pick for the A tier, which also could be in the S tier, but we'll get to that, is of course Groot. Groot has a very large health pool. There's a lot of really creative things you can do with the walls. I believe the walls are really underrated. If anything, you can make small ramps with them to get some type of high ground. You can cut off your line of sight to get a bit of cover. You can even cut off the line of sight between the enemy's tank and their backline. So you can put a wall behind the enemy tank so they can't get healed by their own supports, which will turn them into super easy kills. He also has a crazy high damage output, or at least I believe so, both for his primary and secondary fire when used in conjunction, and a super valuable ultimate which lets you snare enemies and pull them into one place and turn them into completely free kills. So yeah, Groot is a very good choice as well. But when it comes to the S tier, the real gem, the best tank in the game, even though he doesn't really have a real tanky ability, will of course be Venom. Venom is so damn good. He has a huge health pool. I would think it's probably the highest health pool out of all the characters in the game. And on top of that, he has a grapple ability. He has a slam ability. So while he is midair, he can slam right into the enemy. And he has an ability that gives him shields or overheals or overhealth based on how much health he's missing when he activates it. He basically is like Hammond from Overwatch, but juiced up to 200%. Couple that with the fact that he deals a ton of damage, and his ultimate, basically resembling Fizz's ultimate from League of Legends, makes him a absolute pain to play against. I mean, if you're playing Venom yourself, I'm sure you've already experienced this, but it's so easy for you to jump straight into enemy front line, stay alive there, activate your overshield, and then just run back or use your sling to jump back, get healed, and then just repeat the process over and over again just because of how tanky you are. You can even trade with the enemy tanks or enemy players or dive the backline on your own and get away unscathed with some kills to your name if you play it right. So yeah, Venom is by far the best tank in the game. But let's talk about the support heroes as well. So starting off, there's not that many support heroes, but let's go over them because there's quite a difference between the top ones and the bottom ones. So starting off in the C tier, we of course have Mantis. I don't feel like she has that much of an impact with any of her abilities. She does not seem to have much of a healing presence, and I feel like she doesn't have that much of a damage to support her team as well. Definitely gonna put her in the C tier. We don't have a D or F tier in the case of the supports, but she's at the bottom. Next up we have Adam Warlock, and he just looks goofy. I just think he looks goofy. He also doesn't really heal that much. I feel like he does have a heal ability that has 2 charges per use. He doesn't heal with his primary, so he doesn't have much supportive presence. Now obviously the whole attaching a soul to a teammate and letting them have a chance to revive is valuable, but I would rather have a support that actually provides consistent healing or utility to your teammates instead. And his ultimate, where you can revive your entire team with the ultimate, it's not 2016, it's not Overwatch, we've moved past this, we don't want it, we don't need it. Again, I'd rather have a teammate stay alive and do damage and actually play the game than have us lose a fight and then go for a scuffed revive after. So I'm gonna put Adam in the B tier, but moving on with A tier, I'm gonna place Loki, and I might be placing him too low here because I like Loki a lot. There's a lot of potential. Maybe not necessarily as a main support, maybe as a flex support, because he can place these clones like Mirage in Apex Legends, except it's actually useful. He can have 2 clones at the same time, and they actually provide an extension, and not only can he change places with these different clones, many abilities or even his primary attacks that he does also comes out from the clones. So you can have healing or damage coming out from the clones. You can have your ability that turns any incoming damage to healing also extend to these clones. You can cover a larger area. And of course, his ultimate is interesting. I wouldn't say it's that good for support, but it's definitely interesting, which is he can clone himself to a teammate or enemy and use all of their abilities except their ultimates, but he's a support. It's not really much of a reason to be doing all that unless you need a specific ability to help your teammates out, maybe by cloning yourself to an enemy or whatever. I don't think he's that good, all things considered, but I do believe thanks to his primary actually healing his teammates and thanks to the AoE convert damage to heal ability and his clones, that makes him at the very least an A tier support. And of course, the other hero I want to place in A tier who might even belong a little bit higher, but let's just keep it in A tier for now, is Rocket Raccoon. This little fella provides a decent amount of healing with his right click, especially when you use it the right way. You can basically line up the right click to bounce certain ways to travel for your team teammates as long as possible, which is pretty good, but he can also enable his teammates and allow them to deal more damage. He has an ability which lets his teammates come back to life, basically a closer instant respawn point for any teammates that end up dying a little bit too soon. And I know what I said about respawning previously, but it's not that intrusive. It doesn't take that much extra work. You just basically have your teammates back in the fight without any extra effort other than hiding the teleporter. And while I haven't mentioned it too much, and I probably should have, I think this is huge. Rocket Raccoon specifically has a really strong team up with Punisher, where Punisher fires super fast and doesn't need to reload, which basically gives Punisher an additional free ultimate. And seeing as Punisher is very meta right now, it is very likely that you will have a Punisher on your team already, so it makes a lot of sense for Rocket Raccoon to have him as well. Rocket Raccoon also has some pretty fun movement abilities with his passive and with the rocket launcher, but really it's just all the team enabling that lets him shine. As a support, he's also very tiny and difficult to hit. But as for S tier support, we have the only main support, if you may, or main healer in the game. We of course have Luna Snow. She can attach the Idle Aura to an ally, which basically lets a teammate get healed whenever she's healing somebody else. So you can put it on a flanker or high priority target and be able to support 2 teammates at once when healing with your primary. She can also fire a clump of ice to freeze an enemy and restore health. And she has a great passive which makes her ice skating as she is traveling from point A to B, which means you will be able to get from spawn to your team or wherever you want to go. You know, you do a rotation much faster than any other support character. But in addition to being such a good healing ability, I want to say that her ultimate might be the best support ability in the game. Fate of Both Worlds makes Luna start dancing, and just like Lucio in Overwatch, you can toggle between 2 performances, one where you heal your allies or one where you grant them a damage boost. I'm pretty sure you're also basically invulnerable during this entire time. You take basically no damage, if any damage, so you can just jump right into your team, go nuts with it, heal them up and give them a damage boost so you can win that team fight. Overall, compared to all the different heroes in the support category, nobody supports their team nearly as consistently or strongly or even heals as reliably as Luna, which is why she is the S tier pick for a main support. But anyways, that was just me quickly going through the different heroes so you know what you want to try out once you get your beta key. Starting tomorrow, there's going to be drops for beta keys, so all you guys have to do is hop on over to my Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Ottr. We're going to be streaming basically all day. We're going to be starting early in the European morning, so hope to see you guys there, hanging out and getting your beta keys yourself so you can hop in game yourself. And once you're in game, you'll know what to play. But anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. I'll see you all next time. Peace out.